You've probably seen the headlines, right? Maybe scrolling on your phone late at night. They're all over the internet. And honestly, for parents and teachers here in South Africa, they can be, well, pretty alarming. So today, let's cut through all that clickbait and figure out what's really going on.
I mean, look at this one. Claims like this are designed to make your heart skip a beat. They're totally sensational, and they paint this picture of a huge, scary shift happening with our kids' minds. It's no wonder it makes us all so anxious.
So, is there any fire behind all this smoke? That's the big question we're going to tackle. We're going to look at the actual data and, more importantly, dive into what all of this means for our high-ability kids, who, as we know, learn and think in such unique ways.
Okay, so to really understand what's happening, we need to rewind a little and look at this fascinating trend that researchers have been tracking for like over a century. Let's get into the actual science.
For most of the last 100 years, something pretty incredible happened. Generation after generation, average IQ scores actually went up, and they went up consistently. It's called the Flynn effect. It showed that, by these very specific measures, we were getting better and better at certain kinds of thinking.
But recently, something shifted. In some developed countries, researchers started noticing that the upward trend was kind of slowing down, stopping, or even dipping just a little bit. They've called this the reverse Flynn effect. But I want you to hold on to that key phrase, mild decline. This is not some kind of freefall.
This chart really puts it into perspective. You see, the original Flynn effect was a rise of about 2 to 3 points every single decade. Now this reversal, we're talking about a much smaller decline of maybe 2 to 5 points per generation. So yeah, it's a real trend, but the scale is just completely different. Let's just zoom in on that number for a second. A 2 to 5 point drop per generation. Yeah, it's significant if you're a researcher studying population trends, but it is absolutely not the dramatic collapse in intelligence those headlines are screaming about. It's a subtle shift, not a cliff dive.
And, the story is way more complex than just a simple number going down. First off, this isn't happening everywhere in the same way. The declines are often in really specific skills, like fluid reasoning, which is basically just your ability to solve new problems. And let's be honest, IQ tests are just one tool. They don't measure crucial things like creativity or resilience or the incredible digital skills that our kids have today.
So, that's the big picture on the trend itself. But what does this all mean for the kids who are already at the high end of the ability spectrum? I know for so many of us, especially those connected with communities like Gifted Children South Africa, this is the real question that keeps us up at night.
This is really the heart of the matter, isn't it? If the average scores are dipping just a tiny bit, does that mean our brightest kids are being pulled down too, or is something else going on with them?
Well, here's the good news. The key takeaway from the research is a pretty resounding no. The data shows again and again that the gifted population is the least affected by these shifts. Both the original rise in scores and this recent mild dip, they're just much, much weaker at the top.
So you might be asking, okay, but why? Well, a few things are going on. Studies in places like Norway found that the high performers' scores were just way more stable. There's also this thing called a ceiling effect, which basically means a lot of gifted kids were already hitting the maximum score on parts of these tests, so there wasn't really any room for their scores to move. Their cognitive strengths just seemed to be more resilient.
This table lays it all out pretty clearly. Whatever environmental factors might be at play, maybe changes in our schools or how we use technology, they seem to affect the average population the most. But when it comes to gifted kids, their high-ability traits just don't seem to be as affected by these big, broad societal trends.
So knowing that our high-ability kids are this resilient is a huge relief, right? So how do we shift our focus from worrying about these global trends to actually actively supporting their potential right here, right now? Let's talk about what we can do. This right here is the most empowering part of this whole conversation. No matter what any large-scale trend says, the environment you create as a parent or a teacher is an incredibly powerful tool. You have a direct, significant influence on nurturing a child's brilliance. So what does that actually look like? Well, as organizations like GCSA often highlight, we can create spaces with fewer distractions to help them really focus. We can support them as they spend time on complex problems, that deep work. We can ask them those challenging what-if questions that go beyond just memorizing facts. And of course, we need to make sure they get access to enriched learning that truly stretches their minds.
And let's remember their inherent strengths. I love this quote because it gets to the heart of it. The very traits that define so many of our gifted kids, that intense curiosity, their ability to teach themselves, to see patterns, and to adapt to new things, those are exactly the skills needed to thrive in our world today.
Which brings us to a final, and I think really fascinating question.
As our world keeps changing so fast with AI and a nonstop flow of information, maybe the real question isn't whether kids are getting dumber, but whether our old ways of measuring intelligence are even relevant anymore. In a world where any fact is a click away, what do you think truly counts as intelligence?